So, okay, we'll start. I think PPT is visible. Please, some of you can respond.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, for the lab record of
Hmm.
material testing,
Hmm.
is it necessary to follow the particular order of writing the experiments in which
No,
the order
no,
which you have to do
but
for
not
any order?
required. Not required in the index sheet. What is mentioned in the index sheet is there, no index sheet, first sheet.
Yes, sir.
The index sheet, let it be. One minute, there is some disturbance. So index sheet keep as it is, no change in the order.
Okay.
But where you write, so that's depending upon how you are completing this one. We are not going according to the order of the index sheet. But first page or second page, there is an index sheet is there. So don't change the order in the index sheet.
Inside the record, it's not a problem, right?
Record inside no problem, but index sheet only last page number may varies. First experiment may be 8 to 10, second experiment may be 1 to 2 page number. Only that there may be small variation, but inside let it be go according to how you are conducting the experiment.
Okay, sir.
Index sheet don't change the order, let it be as it is given in the manual. Inside no issues. Because we cannot give you sufficient space for some more experiment. So depending upon our convenience, availability of equipment, etc., we'll conduct. And sometimes index sheet is prepared according to the syllabus, but you cannot go according to the syllabus sometimes. So that's why don't worry about it. You go ahead according to what are the way yesterday we have conducted some experiment. You immediately finish it in the continuous manner.
Okay.
Only in the index sheet, don't change the order, let it be as it is. Only page number may change it, that's all. Page number may not be in the order, page number may be some reshuffling, it may be in the disorder, it's okay, no problem, the page number.
Okay, sir.
Because part A, part B experiments are there, and part A, there the marks is different, part B, again, mark is different. That's why index sheet, keep as it is, no change. Any other doubt about lab or what you covered yesterday, the previous class about material science? Okay, then if there is no doubt, we will continue. Then I already uploaded fracture and fracture, fatigue, and creep typed notes. It is there in Google Classroom. You can refer. And those who have a punished textbook also, you can refer. And beginning, I told, so whenever you have time, sufficient time, once you read Material Science by Callister, so you'll get good knowledge about these failures. They are given illustrated with good examples, practical examples. So try to read good books also. Just few minutes, I'll go a little bit fastly. Fracture is nothing but the separation of or a solid body into two or more parts under the action of load. That is very important, under the action of load. There are two types of fracture. One is ductile fracture and one more is brittle fracture. In general, if it is a brittle fracture, there is a less elastic deformation or as well as plastic deformation. If it is ductile, there is a more plastic deformation that we can observe from stress strain diagram. So there are different stages involved in fracture propagation. So first necking is formed, then small voids are formed. Those voids will coalesce or join, and finally it make bigger and bigger void. And from that, it will be a starting point of the crack propagation. And finally, if we apply the load further and further, the crack will propagate, and finally failure takes place. Same thing is shown here. And this is the actual right side. They represent the actual photograph of fractured surface. That is cup and cone fracture surface. This is the photo of cup and cone fracture. And this is the actual photograph of the brittle fracture. In the case of brittle fracture, the fracture surface is perpendicular to the loading direction. Most of the cases, in general, the fractured surface is perpendicular to the loading direction. So there is no cup and cone fracture in the brittle. There are another two types of fracture is intergranular fracture and intragranular fracture. No, that means in the crack propagates along the grain boundary as grain boundaries are weakened and embrittled by impurities, segregation, etc. Hence, fracture occurs. That means in intergranular fracture, the fracture propagates or crack propagates along the grain boundary because grain boundary is the weakest region in the material, or it may be at the grain boundary there may be new compound also formed. So because of new compound there is a embrittlement or become harder and harder. So that means fracture takes place. There is one more is intragranular or transgranular or transcrystalline fracture. In this fracture, crack passes through the grains and fractures passes through the grain. It does not moves along the grain, it moves across the grain. That is the two difference. This is the photograph we can see here. This is the photograph we can see here. This is intergranular. The crack propagates along the grains. You can see here. But here, that intergranular here, it's the intergranular fracture surface. These are both are intergranular here. You can see the fracture. It goes along the grain boundary. So there's a transgranular. The crack propagates across the grain. This is one grain. This is one more grain. This is a schematic sketch. This is schematic sketch to understand the fracture, and this is the actual photograph. When if the stress strain diagram is more, the length is more, then ductility is more. So especially for the ductile fracture, the more amount of energy is required before it fractures or it absorbs or material absorbs the more amount of energy before it fractures. But when the case of brittle fracture, it absorbs very less amount of energy. That's why area below the stress strain curve refers to energy absorbed by the material. The ductile fracture, there's a more elongation. The same thing is shown here. There's a difference in table. It is available in your book. This is this we can those are finished impact testing can understand. I have shown some photos also from V1 or V2 batches. So now it is a ductile fracture. This is brittle fracture. So when it is subject to the load with higher velocity, those load with higher velocity is referred as a impact loading. Like collision of two vehicles, both are moving with very high speed. So when it collides, then there is a fracture. That is referred as impact loading. There is one more shear fracture. This is a regular. There is a separate mechanism that is referred as in the fracture mechanics. There is a separate subject. Within the fracture mechanics, there is one more separate area itself. That is a fractography, where study of the fracture surfaces they'll do. This is the microstructure. You can see this is the microstructure. I think this is total length from this point to this point. Don't think that it is around 6 mm, 6 centimeter. It is around 50 micrometer. 50 micrometer means 0.05 mm. From this, I think, can you see this PPT? I hope it is visible. PPT is visible now. So from this end to this, from this end to this end, don't think that it is a 10 centimeter or 5 centimeter. This total distance is around only 0.05 meter. So 0.05 mm. You can see 1 mm divided by 10, that will be 0.1 mm. 1 mm divided by 20. So you can imagine 1 mm, we have 1 mm, it is divided by 20. So that is the length. This total length is almost 1 divided by 20 mm. That is 50 micrometer. So these are taken from special microscopes. There is a ductile to brittle transition. This topic we are not covered. In general, you have to remember. So aluminum is the ductile material. at room temperature, even at elevated temperature, aluminum is the ductile material. That is a one case. And one more case is, example is like a cast iron. The cast iron is the brittle material. But once you talk about cast iron, just I am remembering, even from the second test, the time management is also very important, because when you're writing the regular offline test, so everything you know, just you are continuously you are writing. But in the online test, sometimes you may refer books, etc. It requires more time. That's why your planning is also very important. You have to answer for 5 questions. So you have to plan accordingly. So for each questions, 90 minutes. For each questions, how many minutes is available? You have to plan. Otherwise, some students they have not written one questions. First 4 questions they have written in detail, neatly. Okay, that's also expected. But time management is also very important, even for the examination also. That's why we know the total number of hours is fixed, that 90 minutes is fixed for your test. Then you have to answer 5 questions. So 90 divided by 5 means how much you'll get, how many minutes you'll get. Some amount of, we'll get around 18 minutes or 20 minutes, maximum 20 minutes. So you have to plan accordingly. So it should not cross. If there is a lengthy question, okay, few minutes. But if you spend more amount, around 25 minutes in one question, another question you have to reduce. Or you are better to study the complete chapter, so that there are some questions it required less time. You have to choose, especially those who want to score good marks in the final examination. Little amount of planning is also required. Around a few students I observed, then written very neatly from 1 to 4 questions. They're not able to answer one more question, last question. That's why then it has happened. So don't worry about the fast. So think about future. You have another 2 tests. You can improve well. That second test and third test, plan properly. So around 18 minutes you'll get for each question. If you spend more time for one question, somehow you have to plan. In the question paper itself, we can write timings also. And try to upload in time. That for uploading around 10 minutes are given. And we have the instruction from the office also. It is too late after 4:10. Strictly speaking, within 3:30 you have to finish it. 3:30 to 3:40, another 10 minutes for uploading. And there's one more extreme is they have given 2 timings. Those who are submitted before 4:10 and those who are submitted after 4:10. Strictly speaking, they have asked us to withhold the result, without the your marks also. Those who are submitted too late, especially on the after 4, those who submitted 4:10, don't expect that also in future. That's it. Try to finish the test within the allocated time, that is 90 minutes, and plan properly, and try to upload within the 3:40. That's the timings. Otherwise, you may miss some questions. But if there is sometimes if there is a lengthy answer, write in the points. Some point 1 by 1, 2, 3, 4 nicely write the point and sketches. That's also sufficient. Now you are talking about the ductile to brittle transition. We know that aluminum is a ductile material at room temperature or at elevated temperature also. But there is one more material, that is a cast iron. It is again metal. It's an alloy of Fe and iron. And there is a difference between steel and cast iron. In the case of cast iron, the percentage of carbon is more. Steel is around less than 2.18% is steel. We can broadly classify the complete. This is also part of, we have one more chapter. The chapter in your second module itself. That's the iron carbon diagram. In once you say iron carbon, it's an alloy of iron. It may be steel or it may be cast iron. So when you come to the percentage of carbon in steel, the percentage of carbon in the steel is very less compared to cast iron, up to 2.18%. If the percentage of carbon is up to 2.18%, around 2.1, that will be around 2, less than 2%, then those alloys are referred as steel. You should be able to distinguish between what are steels and what are cast iron. In the case of cast iron, the percentage of carbon is more, it is more than 2% for time being. And in the case of steel, the percentage of carbon is less than 2%. That is the major distinction. So now we have cast iron. As percentage of carbon increases, the hardness of the material increases. That's why you have to find out hardness of the material by using hardness tester. There are 3 hardness tester. One is Rockwell hardness tester. I think most of the batches we have finished Rockwell hardness testing. We got some number also. One more tester is Brinell hardness tester. One more is Vickers hardness tester. Vickers hardness tester. Madam, class ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೀನಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಓಕೆ ಆಯ್ತು. Sorry, I received an important call. So now we are talking about the cast iron. When you come to cast iron, it's a brittle material. Why it is brittle material is it has more amount of carbon. As percentage of carbon increases in the alloy, the hardness increases, the brittleness increases. That is, we are saying cast iron is a brittle material at room temperature or some elevated temperature, around 100 degrees Celsius or 200 degrees Celsius. If you heat the cast iron at elevated temperature, let it be around 300 or 400 degrees Celsius, so then the hardness of the material will be decreases. It is hardness of the material will be decreases. It will become softer or it become more ductile. So that means there is a transition from the brittle material to the ductile material. Same cast iron material, you are not going to change any alloying element. So percentage of carbon is fixed. Let it be around 3% of carbon. At room temperature is harder material. If you heat the material to elevated temperature, elevated, why you are specifically saying it is elevated temperature? So then what will happen is the hardness will be decreases and its ductility will be increases. There is a range of temperature. So there is a transition, material transformed from brittle material to ductile material. That transition is referred as a ductile to brittle transition or brittle to ductile transition. So for I think you understood the concept. So that means referred as brittle to ductile transition, but here it is a different. But if you consider aluminum, so aluminum is at room temperature. Aluminum is at room temperature. But as aluminum temperature decreases, there is one more case. At room temperature, aluminum is a ductile material. If you decrease the temperature, not just don't think that around of 5 degrees Celsius or 0 degrees Celsius. If you keep that aluminum at minus 50 degrees Celsius or minus 100 degrees Celsius, minus 100 degrees Celsius. So in such cases, the material aluminum become brittle and brittle. So that means aluminum is ductile material at room temperature. Then over a period of time, it will become brittle and brittle. Period of time is as temperature decreases to minus normal minus 50 degree or 100 degrees Celsius. That transition is what I say ductile to brittle transition. You can see here temperature in degrees Celsius. The brittle material is a brittle. As temperature increases, there is a one transition temperature region. This is the transition region. So then it will become ductile. As temperature increases, the material become more and more ductile. As temperature decreases, the material become more and more brittle. That transition temperature is referred as the transition region. Same thing is shown here. ductile to brittle transition. Even though it is brittle to ductile, but normally it is after ductile to brittle transition. At -°C, it is a highly ductile. That can be expressed in terms of fracture energy. What energy you are getting in impact testing, you are getting in terms of joules, 30 joules or 50 joule. That is nothing but a fracture energy. That is how much of energy is absorbed by the material before it fractures is referred as the fracture energy. What you are noting down in ISO impact test or Charpy impact test, that is nothing but a fracture energy. But it is divided by the area that gives energy absorption per unit area will get. So that means for the brittle material, fracture energy is less. For ductile material, the fracture energy is more. We can see it from the plot. So there is a region from transition region. Even though it is a brittle to ductile transition region, still it is referred as a ductile to brittle transition region. In this region, so material behaves both ductile. It is not too ductile. It is not too brittle. There is a region. For aluminum, it is around this particular material. It is, remember, temperature is from 0°C to 400°C. There is a transition region where the fracture energy changes continuously. Do you have any doubt about ductile to brittle transition? You know transition. So material is transformed from brittle to ductile material depending upon the temperature. That is referred as ductile to brittle transition. So here also you can see here the transition temperature. There is one temperature that is referred to the transition temperature. At lower temperature, the material is usually brittle. At higher temperature, material become ductile. This there is one derivation, one or two derivation, but according to your syllabus, it is not mentioned. But still, at the end, we will cover that derivations. But earlier syllabus they are mentioned, but now they are mentioned. So type 1 fracture as per your syllabus, type 1 fracture, type 2 fracture, and type 3 fracture only. So there is a toughness already we have defined. Other than your syllabus being in mechanical engineering, you should know some terms. The toughness already you know. The ability of the material. Can you one of you can answer what is toughness? Already you have discussed in the module 1. One of you can tell me what is toughness? What is toughness? So unmute audio and tell. It may be partially correct or wrong also, no matter. It doesn't matter. What is toughness? Chinmay Shetty, what is toughness? Shashank?
No. Sir.
So
the property of the material to absorb energy without fracture.
Without fracture?
Fracture.
That is partially correct. So there is the ability of the material which resists both elastic deformation as well as plastic deformation. So without fracture, that part is correct. But mainly toughness is related to it resists both. The fracture is nothing but your excessive deformation. Fracture is one of the type of failure. It is a excessive fracture occurs with plastic deformation. Even the tensile test also you have seen. Tensile test also, because of the excessive plastic deformation, necking is formed. So once necking is formed, then further elongation takes place. Then it fractures. So it is a property of the material. By virtue of it, it resists both elastic deformation as well as plastic deformation, or we can say that so without any fracture. So now when you come to, there is a general toughness. So there is a difference between general toughness and at the same time there is a fracture toughness. Imagine we have one steel rod, steel, let be one wooden stick. Its toughness maybe differs. Imagine take one knife and make small cut. Best example is your impact test specimen. Impact test specimen, where there is a V notch. So if there is no V notch, so we can find out the toughness of the material. By conducting tensile test, we can get the toughness of the material. But the area below the stress strain diagram indicates that toughness of the material. If you make V notch on the specimen, or you make small scratches, small notch, then toughness will be reduces. That is referred as a fracture or a crack. You make one crack, surface crack, or there may be crack inside also. If there is a crack, toughness of the material with the pre-existing crack is referred as fracture toughness. The crack is already present in the material. So what is the toughness of the material? Imagine you have the beam, already fractured, there is a small crack in the beam, the building beams. Even small buildings also, there may be small crack. So no one is evacuated, there is a small crack. The crack to propagate, so some additional load to be applied, then only crack will propagate. Even our bones also I am given, there may be micro cracks or some hairline crack. The crack will not propagate unless and until if a sufficient load is applied. That loading is referred to a critical loading or critical stresses are applied, then only crack will propagate further. That's the one part. Second part is there is a crack length. If there is a minute crack, if there is a crack size is bigger and bigger, then only crack will propagate. Otherwise, crack will not propagate. If there is a minor crack in our buildings or walls or somewhere, so crack will not propagate, failure will not take place. For that also, there is a critical value for the crack size. One is critical load and one more is critical size. Then only crack will propagate. Or in simple, now you understand what is toughness. The toughness of the material in the presence of the crack is referred as the fracture toughness. Imagine you are prepared the specimen for before preparation of specimen for impact testing. It may be ISOD or Charpy. There is no notch. Before cutting the notch, we can find out the toughness. You may get one toughness value. Once you cut the notch, or crack is nothing but a bigger crack, surface crack, then toughness may be reduces. In the presence of the crack, what is the toughness? That is nothing but the fracture toughness. So being in mechanical engineering, you should know able to understand what is toughness as well as the fracture toughness. Fracture toughness material is affected by following. One is thickness of the material. If the thickness, then it's the composition depending upon alloying element. And the different alloys having different fracture toughness. Everything is depending upon your dislocation. You're talking about the point defect, line defect, like edge dislocation, screw dislocation, surface defect, volume defect. It will all affect the toughness of the material, at the same time fracture toughness. Then as per your syllabus, they mention as mode 1, mode 2, mode 3 fracture. So mode 1 is also referred as opening or tensile mode. Mode 2 is sliding mode. Mode 3 is tearing mode. That once you see the photos, you can understand better. So mode 1, this is a diagram. In the syllabus clearly mentioned mode 1, mode 2, mode 3 fracture. That's why that is also very important. But derivations and problems are not mentioned. But earlier syllabus, it was their previous syllabus. Sometimes they may ask for that. At the end, I'll do some problems and derivation. But now I'll do according to the present 2018 scheme syllabus. 2018 scheme syllabus, in the fracture, they mention mode 1, mode 2, mode 3 fracture. Definitely, they can expect one question, explain the 3 modes of the fracture, or mode 1 fracture, or mode 2 fracture, or mode 3 fracture. Imagine there's a notch I think for both B1, B2, B1 and B2 batches, I think those who are finished the impact testing by ISO, then you can understand better. Or you can imagine there is a crack here or notch here, notched specimen. You are pulling from the top as well as bottom. Like a opening of the book. Book, there is no bonding between one sheet to the another sheet. There may be. So if you open like this, if you pull from the top as well as bottom, then it is referred as a mode 1 fracture. So now instead of pulling, if you slide top surface from the bottom surface, then it is referred as a mode 2 fracture. Imagine it is a metal is having some notch. So then because of it may be subject to tension and compression loading. Continuous it is pulled from in one direction, it is pulling from one direction, it is pulled in the top surface is pulled in the opposite direction. Imagine the top surface is pulled from the back, and no, top surface is pulled from the back, the front surface pulled from the front, bottom surface is pulled from the front. We can see the arrows. Then the crack will propagate. Initial size of the crack is very small. The crack will propagate. Then it is referred as mode 2 crack. Then mode 3 crack is tearing mode. So instead of pulling, in this case, your direction of the pulling or loading is perpendicular to the crack surface. You can see here. Here mode 2 crack, again it is not perpendicular, it moves slides along the direction on the same plane, but here it is in the opposite direction. So then it is referred as mode 3 crack. So everything is depending upon how the load is applied or how component are subject to loading. The crankshaft loading may be different. Imagine there is a small crack in the crankshaft, its loading may be different. If the same crack is similar type of crack is there in the piston, the loading, the mode of failure will be different. Because the fracture is also one form of failure. The failure may occur in mode 1 fracture, mode 2 fracture, or mode 3 fracture, depending upon how the components are subject to loading. These 3 diagrams you have to practice. So here it is one more 3D diagram is available. For the examination, you can write this diagram. Examination for the even for the test, you can write this diagram. But here, when you come to displacement of a crack surface, we can see for understanding concept, I put one more PPT. So you are pulling like this. You imagine you have the crack, initial crack. Once you pull, the crack will propagate. Here it is pushed in different direction. Bottom surface is pulled towards you, and top surface pulled away, pushed away from you. Then it is what is the mode 2 crack. Then this is mode 3 crack. Same explanation is given here. That will finish as according to your syllabus, it will finish as fracture. Then you have to go for other type of failure. If you have any doubt in fracture, I'll stop for a few minutes. You can clarify your doubt. If there is no doubt, I'll go for one more type of failure, that is referred as fatigue failure. One minute, I'm opening the fatigue PPT. So is it PPT is visible now? So please tell me.
No, sir.
Huh? Yes or
No,
no?
sir. It's not visible.
No, sir.
Okay, okay then. Now? Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So now what I do is fatigue. There is a how you have to understand the difference between fracture and fatigue. In the case of fracture, you are assuming that there is a defect in the material. In all material, defect is present. Whatever may be the type of material, there may be defect in point defect, or it may be line defect, it may be surface defect, or it may be the volume defect. But you are talking about macroscopic defect. In the case of fracture, you are assuming that already crack is present in the material. So crack is present. It may be micro crack. Micro crack means don't think that you are in terms of angstrom or in terms of nanometer. So you can by seeing through the microscope, you can get the size of the crack maybe 0.1 mm or 0.01 mm. Size of the crack may be not in the atomic level or not in the microstructure level, and not in unit lattice structure level. But crack is present in the material, bigger size crack. Bigger size, don't think that it is 5 mm or 10 mm. There may be micro crack also, hairline crack also. So now, fracture, in the case of fracture, the crack is already present. Once it is subject to loading, the crack will propagate and finally failure of the material may take place. The best example is take on a small wooden stick, bamboo stick, take one knife and cut, make small cut, you bend it, it fractures. The crack will propagate and finally fracture takes place. But without cutting also we can bend, but you have to put more effort to break the stick. Now you can understand the difference. In the case of fracture, I'll make small cut on the bamboo stick, I'll bend, it fractures. Now second case, I don't make any cuts, you are assuming that bamboo stick is perfect, you try to bend, the bamboo stick will just bend, it undergo plastic deformation or elastic deformation, it will not fracture easily. If you bend many times, around 10 to 15 times continuously, then crack may be formed. Crack may be generated or formed in the material during the process of loading. So then such type of mechanism are referred as a fatigue mechanism. In the fatigue, the defect or crack, micro crack will be developed or formed during the process of loading. During the process of cyclic loading, not just loading, like it is not comes under static loading, it comes under the cyclic loading. I am given the example of cyclic loading. Imagine you have the shaft is mounted with the bearings, and shaft is running at 100 RPM, let it be 100 RPM or let it be 10 RPM. At the center of the shaft, there is a pulley. As shaft rotates, imagine you have topmost line, you are referred as a line A. Put two lines on the shaft in the opposite diagonal lines. Topmost line is referred as A. Bottommost line it is referred as B, like a beam. Top of portion surface is referred as A. Bottom surface of the beam is B. So once load is applied from the top, the bottom surface of the beams is subject to tensile loading. The top surface is subject to compression loading. But I am rotating the beams through 180 degree. Then top portion will come and occupy the bottom portion. Earlier it was subject to compression loading. Let it be 10 megapascal of compression loading. When you come to the bottom surface, the loading remains same. Again 10 megapascal, but it is subject to tensile loading. That means same shaft as it rotates, it may be subject to tensile loading and compression loading. The loading will be changes. depending upon the position. If the RPM is 100 times the surface or same line is subject to compression loading, tensile loading, compression loading, tensile loading. Like that, it will happen. So now, if the RPM is relatively 1000 RPM, 1000 times the stress will be changes from tensile to compression, compression to tensile. Like that, continuously it will be changes. Then one more case is one more case is if the RPM is around 15,000, especially steam turbines are running at the initial stage, the steam turbines are running at very high speed. Then by using some reduction gear, the speed is reduced to around 2,500 RPM to get maximum power output. So that means each line, suppose if you mark one line on the shaft, mark one line with using your sketch pen or marker pen. That same line is subject to compression and tensile, around 15,000 times. Or we can say that your stress reversal takes place like a sinusoidal curve. It goes to the maximum peak, then comes to zero, then it goes down negative. That will be plus 100 megapascal to minus 100 megapascal. There is a stress reversal. Because of the stress reversal, so this crack may be generated, fatigue crack may be generated inside the material. But in the case of fracture, you are assuming that already crack is present, and once it is subject to loading, the crack will propagate. But in the case of fatigue, the crack is nucleated from the surface or inside the subsurface also. Then the first stage is nucleation of the crack. Once crack is nucleated, once it is subject to loading further and further, then crack will propagate. Then finally, and finally crack propagates, and finally fracture takes place. That is what is fatigue fracture. But the first stage in fracture, crack is already present. But when you come to fatigue, so initially you are assuming that there is no defect, macroscopic defect, macroscopically visible defect, or we can visit with some lenses, we can see the defect. But when you come to fatigue, there is no defect, there is no pre-existing crack. The crack is nucleated when it is subject to stress reversal. Then it is referred as a fatigue. That understanding the fatigue is fracture is very simple, but fatigue you have to understand better. Again, to understand fatigue, so you require a lot of the fundamentals of first module. Once you understand, if you are very familiar with the first module, complete first module, then it will be easy. But in general, the failure may take place by fracture, fatigue, or as well as creep. Then there is a physical degradation. There are different failures are there. And during the processing, during this, when material is subject to loading, there may be microstructural changes. You are talking about the microstructure. You are talking about the grain boundary. So most of the time, your plastic deformation may be because of one is twinning, the twinning process. One more is phase transformation. One more is grain growth. So one more is particle coarsening. These are the changes happening in the material. Once you heat the material to the red hot condition or during your heat treatment, there may be microstructural changes. So when you during your forging process also, there may be microstructural changes. So that is one is plastic deformation by twinning. That is, everything is depending upon the atomic arrangement. Once it is subject to tensile loading or compression loading, that especially twinning occurs whenever there is a loading, and arrangement of the atoms are like a mirror-like images. In a systematic order, the atoms will be rearranged once it is subject to loading. Then it is about the twinning. There may be phase transformation. So in the previous class, I given just introduction to the phase. You have seen some actual micrographs or photographs of grain. There may be dark phase, there may be white phase. It is not only decided by the color, it is decided by its properties. It may be chemical properties, it may be physical properties, or it may be thermal properties. Like, so we have liquid phase. The liquid is having different properties. When it is transformed to solid phase, then properties will be different. Physical property may be different, but chemical formula CO, H2O, that may remain same. Whether it is a liquid state, solid state, or some other state, the chemical formula remains same. But properties, so the density of the ice cube is different. Density of the water is different. Density of the same steam is different. It is produced by the same steam, this water. So those are the physical properties. That is in the we can understand because already you have studied in your PUC level, high school level, from gaseous phase to liquid phase to solid phase. There are different change of phases. But when you come to material science, you are talking what is happening within the solid phase only. Within the solid, there may be change of phase. So during your forging operation, if you see the microstructure by optical microscope or any microscope, so then after forging operation, if you see some cut section of the forging component, if you take the microstructure, then their properties may be different, phases may be different, or we can say grain, the size of the grain may changes. Once the material is elongated, grain also may be also elongated. Those are referred as microstructural changes. So to understand fatigue, the fatigue crack is nucleated. During the process of fatigue loading, the crack is nucleated or generated because of microstructural changes that you have to understand. So now fatigue, already I think you have finished on experiment on fatigue. I have not given it for record writing. Next week you have to write. So now don't worry about this definition, but at least the process of progressive, localized, permanent structural changes. The structural changes is nothing but you have to understand it is a microstructural changes. The permanent changes means it is a permanent deformation. And it is not like in the tensile test hole, the specimen may elongate. But in the case of fatigue, there may be localized crack may be formed. The crack will propagate. That's why it is after localized permanent deformation. Even in the impact testing also, you are applying the load only wherever there is a crack on that particular point or notch. On that point, the plastic deformation occurs. That's why it is referred to localized permanent structural changes occurring in a material subject to the condition that produce fluctuating stresses. Once you say fatigue loading, it is a fluctuating stresses or stress reversals or loading changes from, best example is like a sinusoidal curve. The loading changes from minus, imagine you have a steel rod, you are pulling the steel rod with 10 megapascal for stress, you are pushing the same steel rod with that same 10 megapascal stress. Imagine you have a steel rod, you are pushing and pulling continuously. It means steel rod is subject to both compression as well as tensile loading. Not simultaneously, alternatively, steel rod is subject to compression loading as well as tensile loading. Those stresses are referred as a stress reversal. At point, they may culminate in crack. The crack may be nucleated, it culminated in crack or complete fracture after sufficient number of fluctuation. The final stage of the fatigue is nothing but a fracture, but your crack is nucleated when it is subject to sufficient loading. There are theories are there, it's not so important. These are the grinds because we are talking about the microstructure changes. So this is when it is a liquid state metal. This is just solidification started, like a small cubes in the ice cubes in the water. Once you keep the water in the freezer, then ice cube size maybe increases. Then finally, once it is solidified, we have grind. This is one grind. This is one more grind. This is one more grind. This is one more grind, and we can see. From the microscope, we can see this is only the schematic boxes, like schematic sketches to understand unit cell. Each box is referred to unit cell. This we have group of unit cell which forms one grain. This is the group of unit cell which forms one grain. So like that here also group of unit cell which forms the grain. This is one grain, this is one more 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 grain. Like that there are many grains. I think today I'll stop because fatigue, there is a failures mechanism. How failure takes place in fatigue, you require a lot of the microstructure. Because of the microstructure changes only, fatigue takes place. I think next class I'll continue. The once you understand fatigue, the creep also you can understand better, because in the creep also, where material is subject to higher temperature, elevated temperature, at the same time it is subject to loading. Creep also one more failure because of the loading at a higher temperature. Fatigue is also one more type of failure when it is subject to stress reversal. The fracture is also subject to loading, but not necessarily stress reversal. It may be steady load or it may be impact load, whatever may be the type of load. So over a period of time, the crack will propagate and finally it fractures. That is the conclusion what you have done in the previous class and today's class. I think those are, if you have any doubt about basic concept of grain, the phases, the crystalline material, you can ask. Those are the fundamentals required for fatigue. If there is no doubt, those who are in the class, just type your USN number as well as name for your attendance. Those are not entered, please enter your USN number and name. And those who have, if you have any doubt about the basic structure of grain, because understanding the fracture and creep, the fatigue and creep, you require, you at least you should imagine what is grain, what is the phase, then you can understand better that, because next class I'm going for fatigue and creep. If there is no doubt, I'll stop the class. I think we have one more class in the next. So those who have not entered your USN number as well as name, please enter. ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಇದು ಮತ್ತೆ ಮರ್ತೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತದೆ. ಡೇಟ್ ಬರೀರಿ, ಡೇಟ್ ಬರೀರಿ, ಟೈಮ್ ಏನು ಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ, ಡೇಟ್ ಬರೀರಿ. ಅದು CL ಅಂತ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಅದು 20ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ಮತ್ತೆ ಮರ್ತೋಗ್ತದೆ. ಇದು ಮಾಡೋ. Okay, thanks. I'll leave the class.